Guys, welcome to another episode of the Four Pillars of Health with Kevin Davis. Today, we're going to talk about 5 strategies to lower your blood sugar, and as an added bonus to that, you're going to lose weight. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Kevin Davis, and I'm an online men's health coach. And what I do is I help guys become the CEO of their health. I help them lose weight, gain muscle, gain energy, so that they can live the life that they want to live. So today we're going to talk about prioritizing some things in your life so that you can get the results that you want to get. Now, you may be wondering, why am I talking about blood sugar as far as, with weight loss? Well, if you understand the pathophysiology, there's a lot of weight gain that is due to increased blood sugar. And the reason is, when you increase your blood sugar, you increase your insulin. And insulin is probably something maybe you've never even had tested before. And if you have a high insulin level, then what it does is insulin is your fat storage hormone. So many times we want to get results. We want to lose weight. We want to gain muscle. We want to have energy. But what we have to realize is, the first thing is, what's causing this? If we can address the cause issue, then we can get the results that we want to get. So many people want to go on a crash diet. They want to cut calories and things like that. And you'll lose weight. You'll lose weight initially, at least. But then usually what happens is you plateau. And when you plateau, what happens? You get frustrated and you go back to what you were doing before. And that's what we see a lot of times with people doing yo-yo dieting. They'll lose weight, they'll gain weight. They'll lose weight, they'll gain weight. And in the end, it really, you're worse off than you were when you started. So what are the 5 strategies that you can concentrate on to lower your blood sugar? And as a result, you're going to lose the weight that you want to lose. The first thing is macros. You have to prioritize protein. If you've listened to me before, you know this is a reoccurring theme with a lot of things with our health. We have to prioritize protein because unlike carbohydrates, protein has a minimal effect on your blood sugar. It does raise it some, but not like carbohydrates do. And when you don't raise your glucose with your protein, then you're not going to get the downstream effect as far as like with your carbs. So how can you incorporate more protein? You need to eat meats and fish. Now, personally, I do better with lean meats. Danae, my wife, does better with fatty meats. We're all a little bit different. And really, I think a lot of us has to go, when we took a deep dive into our genetics, we have different genetics. So it's not a one-size-fit-all, but you have to incorporate meat and fish, fish for your omega-3s as well, but meat to get the protein in. You can do eggs as well. Eggs are a very good source. They help a whole lot. They have things like choline in it, which helps with your overall health. And dairy products. Now, some people are dairy, they're lactose intolerant. And I can't eat too much dairy myself. If I start eating too much dairy, I start getting some side effects from it. Actually, I think I get more earwax, which sounds weird. But I've noticed and I've researched, having more dairy with me has caused me to have more earwax. Now, some of the other things that I have problems with dairy is bloating. If you bloat, if you have gas, if you have heartburn, see if it's related to dairy, and you may need to cut back or eliminate that. But with dairy, Greek yogurt is really a good source. Cottage cheese is good. Now, both of those, no added things, especially with the Greek yogurt, no added sugars. So what is some of the benefits as far as like protein? Your insulin response is what we talked about. Protein helps slow down the digestion. So if you're eating meals, if you eat protein first, it's going to help as far as your overall insulin response, because it's not going to, if you eat your carbs first, like most people do at restaurants, they eat the bread and things like that, makes your sugar go up a little bit higher, a little bit quicker. If you eat with protein, it's blunted. It doesn't go up as much. The other thing that we've talked about many times on this with protein is muscle maintenance. The more muscle that you have, the better off you are. So it's an interesting fact. Muscles really don't need to have insulin to uptake the glucose into them. There's another transport system that can be used. So the more muscle that you have, the more uptake of glucose that you have. And when you have more uptake of glucose, obviously you're going to have less insulin. So what can you do? With every meal, you need to have protein. With every snack, you need to have protein. So if you're just eating chips, Wrong way of doing it. You need to eat some protein with that. Obviously, chips are not the best thing to eat, but if you're going to have something like that, make sure you get protein first. Second thing is consider protein supplements, protein shakes, things like that. Now, you have to be careful with those as well because a lot of them have a lot of added sugar to it. But I personally use protein shakes to get my protein uptake where I need it to be. I try to get between 150 to 180 grams of protein. It's different for everybody. And then meal planning. Meal planning is very important. I usually try to get out on my Blackstone and make at least 2 or 3 days worth of meals so I can meal prep and have the food ready for me. So if you meal prep, you have the protein already there. It's not something you have to get you have to go out and cook every day for it. Just meal prep and take care of the problems for 2 or 3 days at a time. Second thing you can do is fast. Now, fasting is just not eating. It's not that you're eating less, it's just you're eating less often. And there's different types of fasting. You can do a 16-8, which is the most common one, where you fast for 16 hours and you eat for 8 hours. That's just basically you're going to skip breakfast and then eat lunch and dinner, or you're going to skip dinner, eat breakfast and a late lunch. Either way is okay. The second way, where you eat breakfast and a later lunch, is probably best for overall, I think, because you're not eating close to bedtime. But there's different ways of fasting, and it really depends on where you're at in your journey. Again, if you've listened to me in my recent podcast, I've talked about where I've not been fasting as much just because I don't need to fast as much. So what happens when you fast? Well, you're just not taking anything in. Now, your body's continuously producing insulin. It's always, unless you're a type 1 diabetic. Totally different story. If you're a type 1 diabetic, we need to have a different conversation. But if you're not a type 1 diabetic, you are releasing a little bit of insulin all the time. It's a small amount. And when you eat, your insulin level goes up, because that's what it's supposed to do. And then it's supposed to go back down. Well, if you're not eating, obviously you're not getting those surges of insulin production. So that allows your body to become more insulin sensitive, not insulin resistant, which is where we want to be at. And then obviously when you're not eating, your blood sugars are not going up and you're having reduced blood sugars. And that's a help as far as like not storing that blood glucose in fat cells and liver cells and things like that. So how do you start intermittent fasting? Well, that's probably where you need someone like me or somebody in your corner has a little bit idea of what they're doing with it as far as like the best way to start. You have to find what your lifestyle is to begin with, because what I do and what you do may be totally different because our lifestyles are different. So we have to look at our lifestyle, something that we can do, incorporate into our life, and then we have to figure out, why are we fasting? Because if we're fasting because we need to get a kickstart, well, maybe a 24-hour fast is what we need. Maybe you just need a 16-8 fast. Maybe you need to do something like a 5-2 fast, where you're fasting for 5 days and eating regular for 2 days. So there's different ways of doing that. But what you want to do is probably, if you've never fasted before, is kind of ease into it to begin with. Don't do a 24-hour fast if you've never did one before, because you're probably going to be hungry, because there's some hormonal changes that are happening when you fast that are going to make you more hungry and have less satiety. So you need to kind of ease into it depending on where you're at with that. And then obviously if you're fasting, you need to make sure you're staying hydrated, drinking electrolytes, things like that, to make sure that they stay where they need to go. So what happens when you fast is you increase your fat burning. You start burning glucose that is stored, maybe in your fat cells, muscle cells, liver cells, and things like that. But you start burning that for energy instead of the foods that you eat. It's kind of like if you look at a refrigerator and a freezer. If you got some food in the refrigerator, you're going to use that first because it's ready to be used, right? Rather than if you have some, let's just use steak. Say you're going to have steak tonight, and you got steaks in the refrigerator and you got steaks in the freezer. Which one are you going to use first? You're going to use the steaks in a refrigerator because they're more readily available. They're one in the freezer, you got to take out, you got to let it thaw, those type of things. And that's the way it kind of looks with stored fat. It takes a little while to get to that period where you're burning that stored fat. And that's why we want to kind of ease into it, especially if you've never done it before. And then also there's things that helps with hormones. Fasting too much can be detrimental, but when you're first starting out, it can actually optimize some hormones, including insulin and hormone growth, human growth hormone, which can aid in fat metabolism. So third thing you need to do is you need to walk 10,000 steps, especially after you eat. Now, Regular physical activity is good, and if you've been watching me, if you've been listening to any of mine on the previous podcasts or videos about exercise, I've always emphasized resistance training, and I'll continue to do that. But I think what we need to do here is concentrate on just moving. So many times, if you're not tracking your steps, me included, then we only get 7,000 steps per day, and we need to get probably a minimum of 10. Because what happens is when you're walking, you utilize that glucose. Just a couple weeks ago, me and Danae were in Florida, for instance, and we didn't have a car. We flew, so we were Ubering around. But there was we ate at a restaurant, and we wanted to go get ice cream somewhere else. So we ate at a restaurant, and we walked, and we both had continuous glucose monitors on. And what we noticed is our sugars, even if we eat some things we probably normally don't at dinner time, our blood sugars didn't rise. They actually dropped. They actually dropped in the low 60s. So we got to the ice cream place, had some ice cream, continued to walk probably about a mile and a half back to the hotel because it was nice out. We were didn't have anything else to do, so we wanted to just walk and enjoy the scenery. And our blood sugars actually dropped. So you can kind of see that, I'm using up that energy from the things I shouldn't have ate, but my blood sugars didn't spike, therefore increasing my insulin. So you can do some tricks with that, but you need to be able to do on a regular basis. So first, you need to get in 10,000 steps. And if you can, walk 10, 15 minutes after you eat. If you can do that every time after you eat, you're going to increase your insulin sensitivity, and your glucose is going to go down, your insulin is going to go down, and your fat storage is going to go down. So the benefits for fat loss, just like we talked about, is going to increase calorie burn. Walking helps burn calories, and it has a caloric deficit. Even though I don't really count calories, but there is some things with calories. If you eat less than what you're supposed to or to maintain, then you are going to lose weight. But we're more concentrating on what to eat. But there is a calorie deficit because you're doing that. And also it helps with your visceral fat, especially if you're sprinting with this type as well. Sprinting helps with visceral fat, which is fat around your organs, which is the most detrimental kind of fat you can have. Now, the fourth thing you can do is sleep. Sleep is so important. And if I had to pick one area where I struggle the most, it's this, because sometimes I don't have enough hours in a day. It seems like what I want to do. And I pay for that sometimes if I don't get the rest. So when you have sleep issues, if you have sleep apnea, if you're not sleeping enough, if you're waking up to pee during the nighttime, you're stressing your body out, which is increasing your cortisol. When you increase your cortisol, you increase your glucose. You increase your glucose, you increase your insulin. Increase your insulin, you increase your fat storage. See how the cascade works? And no diet pill can take care of that. It's something that you have to correct with your lifestyle. So if you can sleep well, you can actually increase your insulin sensitivity. If you don't sleep well, it can increase your insulin resistance, which is not good. Again, there's a lot of hormones that are happening during the nighttime. And if you're not sleeping well, you're not optimizing this. If you're a guy, especially, testosterone, that's where it's made during the nighttime. If you're not sleeping well, your production is going to go down, as well as your human growth hormone. So there's things like that, and that's going on that can really be detrimental to your health. So how do you sleep? We've talked about this before. You need to establish a routine. Go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time. That's the best way. Have a dark room, have a cool room. Don't eat 3 hours before you go to bed. Get off your screens 1 hour before you go to bed. Those are the things you need to do to kind of get into a routine of sleeping well. And the last thing with the sleep too, and if you start noticing this, if you start charting things like I do, I try to keep track of my health. I look at what kind of symptoms am I having and what caused that. And one thing that really I've found is if I'm not sleeping well, I'm not getting the rest that I should, my appetite control is not as good. My cravings seem to get worse if I'm not sleeping well. So see if you can see that cause and effect in your life. Let me know. It'd be interesting to see what kind of cause and effects you see in your own life, especially with your sleep. And finally, adding muscle. We talked about resistance training before, and this is where it's so important. You increase that muscle mass, you're going to be able to increase your blood sugar control better, which is going to drop your insulin, which is going to help you lose weight. And adding muscle, especially you do number one, adding the protein. So you're going to increase your glucose storage. If you notice all these bodybuilders, man, they can eat a whole lot, but they have so much muscle mass that they increase that uptake of glucose, and that helps them maintain their fat loss. They increase their insulin sensitivity. Why is that? Because if you have less glucose flowing through your blood, your body's not going to keep producing that insulin, which causes you to have insulin resistance. So you lower the glucose, you're going to have better insulin sensitivity. So how do you start training? Now, if you're like me, I started 15 years ago or so in the weight room. I was very timid. I walk in there, these guys are benching, 400 or 500 pounds. They're big guys and things like that. And here I am getting the bar off, or just a plate or two on each side, smaller plates. You kind of get intimidated. But what you do is you have to go in there and you just have to get started. If you've ever been in a gym, and if your gym is not like this, you need to get away from it. But almost every gym I've ever been in, people are there willing and wanting to help you. They can see that you may be struggling. And if you are, reach out to them. They can help with your spot. They can help you with your form. They can give you some pointers and things like that. If you need help with that, that's what we do with our coaching. We have an app that gives you like the videos and things like that, so you can get started. So what you have to do is just get started. And what you want to do is track your foods as well, because what you want to do is, or not track your foods, but track your progress, how much you're lifting, how many times you lift it. Because what you want to do is progressively overload and try to every week, every month, or something like that, getting stronger and stronger. It may be just 5 pounds or lifting it one more time than you did 3 weeks ago, but you're getting stronger. So those are the things you kind of look out for, and that's what I try to do. How often should you do it? If you're a beginner, 2 times a week is great. Actually, I read an article the other day that if people can get to where they want to go or close to where they want to be at, if they just lifted 1 time a week, they can maintain that. Now, if you're like me, I kind of got hooked onto weightlifting, and I want to do that every day. I don't feel well if I don't. So this is something that I've incorporated into my life. So when you when you add muscle by resistance training, you're going to increase your metabolism, and you're going to increase your fat burning. So those are the things that we can do, 5 strategies to lower blood sugar and as well lose fat is prioritize protein, fasting, walk 10,000 steps, sleep well, and add muscle. So if you can do those 5 things to your life, and if you can't do all 5, if you can do just 1, that's a great place to get started. Because if you add 1 to it, what you're going to find is, hey, I'm doing good in this area. Let me add another one. And then you'll add another one. And then before you know it, in 6 months, you're going to be doing all 5, and you're going to start seeing results. The key is just being consistent with it. If you're not consistent with it, that's where you have trouble with it. And, one thing that I found with my coaching is a lot of times, if I can get someone in my program and they do this, and they do it for 3 months, which is what my typical program looks like, then they start getting in a routine, and they're able to maintain that routine and continue doing it well after the times they're coaching with me. So again, if you're ever interested in having me as your coach, please reach out. We can have a discussion, see what plan is best for you, and I'd love to see what we can do to help you. But today we are talking about, we're going to go to our catechisms, and this is, what is the 6th commandment teach us? It says to avoid hatred. Hatred is something that is down deep. Getting angry with somebody. Jesus got angry, but he had a reason for it when he was in the temple with the people who were buying and selling and things like that, because they were doing it in his house. So, for biblical reasons, there are times where, you can get angry. But when you have a hate, when you hate somebody, it's a different level. It's more inward, I think. It's more in your heart. And we can hate sin, but we can't hate the sinner. We got to love the sinner. We got to reach out to them, because we were all sinners at one time. If someone hated a sinner, no one would have come to me and talked to me about Jesus, because they would have hated me. And that's not the way we need to be. We need to be where we're hating the sin, not the sinner. We need to reach out to those people, because we were all there, and we still continue to sin every day. But me personally, and hopefully you as well, has asked Jesus, Lord Christ, to be your personal Lord and Savior, and you're above that condemnation, and we want to continue going to Christ. We want to be more like Him. But when we're talking about other people around us, we don't need to be hating them. We need to be hating the sin that's in their life, and just love them so much that we want to go to them to tell them about Jesus, the source of eternal life. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys had a great time listening. Reach out with any of these. If you see any cause and effects about any of these things, I would love to hear some comments. If you need to reach out to me as far as coaching, reach out and we can have that conversation at any time. You guys have a blessed day.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. No patient-provider relationship is implied or established. This podcast in no way represents the practice of medicine. The information given is to be used at the listener's own risk. Please consult your provider before making any changes, as the contents of this podcast is no substitution for your provider's instruction.